If you actually hear a sound of a glass breaking loudly somewhere in this room, what was the first thing that you're going to do? You raise up your fingers, you point to the direction of the sound, and you start asking the person standing closest to that breaking glass and still asking this question: who broke this glass? The reason why we actually start thinking this way, because people nowadays, especially in Cambodian society, we start thinking about the question who before the question why, before the question how, even before the question what, because it's easier to get an answer from the person closest to the issues. Whenever as students, I actually see this phrase really frequently. My lecturers usually put it in a slide. If you're thinking about Cambodia history, it evokes the sense of tragedy. But if you talk about or think about Cambodia education, it invokes the sense of crisis. This particular phrase has never actually touched me. I came from a family with a middle class family. I was well equipped. My parents actually encouraged me to pursue higher education. So most of that phrase didn't actually touch me. Not until last year, when I take a step back from all the career I have progressed so far, I took a step and teach biology for grade 7 in a public school here in Phnom Penh City. Man, oh man, there's a lot of difference. The first thing that I might do as well, after I see multiple issues happen in the school, whose fault is this? I didn't even notice that I start asking that question more frequently than usual, especially when I start seeing education problem in Cambodia in particular. However, I also took a step back. I took a step back to think about why my teachers mentioned two important words: history and education. Looking back a little further, in 2014, Cambodia education faced a really large reform. How many of you in the audience are currently a student? Please raise your hand. Whoa, interesting. How many of you graduate in 2014? We have a few. The big change in 2014 is the fact that the number of students failing the national exit examination is 75% out of 100, meaning only 25, hopefully you are in the audience at the 25 that passed the first round of that education system. The thing is that back then, people start reforming the cheating policy, you know? And the fun part about it all is when we start thinking about it, we see a lot of Facebook posts, a lot of finger pointing, but who is the closest to those change? Ministry of Education, Youth, and Sport. Right next to it is our new Minister of Education, Dr. Hong Chun Maron. Our finger point directly toward that particular area and direction because it's a common instinct. We point to that direction because we no longer want to ask the question why it happened. We no longer want to ask the question how did it happen, but we want answers from the person standing right next to the issues. Whether or not that particular person are in charge or responsible for that particular change of issues, it doesn't matter. I just want answer from you. But then, let's take another step backward. How many of you were born before 1980? Ooh. How many of you have parents that was born during the Khmer Rouge or before Khmer Rouge? Please raise your hand. Looking back further into Cambodia education history, we start seeing the fact that Cambodia education has one hit a restart, especially during the 1975, where the Khmer Rouge happened. The first person that they killed is who? Thank you, scholar and teachers. So during that dark time, Cambodia education hit a restart button and start again from scratch. However, if you look at it in the format of this, if we consider Cambodia education as a child, it is very young. How old is it? It is 40 years old as of this year, right? This marked a really big change within Cambodia education, especially when we're actually heading into ASEAN integration, and many more. We actually wanted to grow up so fast. We want education to catch up. We want education to follow the trend. We want education to hit the quality that we want. However, I'm asking this toward parents. Can you force your child to grow up according to what you want? Can you force your child to grow up because you think they need to? Can you force your child to reach this level of age, maturity, without actually providing the right tool and guidance? This is the reason why I'm standing up here today. I'm actually not going to talk about how we're gonna fix this, or I'm not gonna talk about how or who is wrong here. But if we talk about Cambodia education as a child, you actually start to understand that usually raising a child take a lot of effort. I'm saying this directly to the parents, parent to be, but at the same time to the future generation as well. Every child doesn't need just parents, they need the surrounding, they need everyone else. And as of today, we're going to talk about 6 specific stakeholders in raising this child. After looking at this, how many of you do you think that you fit this category? 1, how many of you are students? Raise your hand. Thank you. Please take care of the child. 2, how many of you are teachers? Oh, a few. Thank you. Please take care of that child too. 3, how many of you own a school or have worked in a school management? Okay, so also take care of that child. How many of you inspire to work for the Ministry of Education? Well, not many or not at all, but I do. And most importantly, how many of you are parents? And how many of you have friends that are actually struggling to get their education, or struggling to complete assignment, or struggling and complaining online that assignment deadline is coming soon? Please raise your hand. Wow, that's more interesting. So at the moment, I am a student and a teacher at the same time. But one thing I salute most about my students is their ability to do this. In Khmer phrase, the moment when I put a test paper on their desk, the first thing they say, I'm going to use the Khmer phrase, "Ở tại khởi nhé cha." How many of the students out there in the audience have said that phrase? Raise your hand. You owe your teacher one, but at the same time, you also owe yourself one as well. We actually ask the question a lot about, we're not taught about this, we don't know about this, but who's stopping you? As time passes by, students start to become less curious and follow the trend of what provided in every curriculum. Every student tends to follow teachers a bit too much. But if we look at education as a child, student is the child baby. This education system is really young. And how young the baby gonna be? The baby going to have a lot to catch up along with their parent as well. If education is young, the baby needs to push. The student themselves need to be curious. They need to push beyond the limit. As of today, the reason why I'm actually raising this topic up, because there's a lot of young students and young leaders out there making this happen, and all of them are currently students. To the organizers, raise your hand if you are still a student. To the organizers, so all the organizers are still students. They're still going through this process, but they're still doing something about it. They're curious, they're driven, they are initiative. They're seeking change by themselves. How many of you get grade after this for the organizers? No one. There's more than just education alone. There's more than just what taught at school. There's power of curiosity has been the key driven factors of improving educations. We can't demand education to grow, but we can grow with education. Students just needs a bit more of curiosity. But as a teachers, I usually compare teacher to mother. My mother usually said this to me a lot. If I actually rest for class, if there's one single plate of rice on the table, she would ask me to eat it and then go to school. When I start teaching, I start to understand that concept. When my student want to know something, I really want to give them the best that I could. However, what I was unable to is the fact that I never have a background in biology. I'm currently doing my best to research every single day to actually help my student understand what cancer is. And the most embarrassing of all, when you teach grade 7 and they're at the age of growing up, there's a lot of new things that happen to their bodies that they will come to you silently and ask. As the male teachers, most of the time I would just, very nice. I'll tell you later. That happened a lot because there's a lot of things that teachers tend to try to be the person to provide the best education. But at the same time, the growth of the teacher should be alongside it. If we talk about education as a child, teacher is the mother of that child. Teachers is the person that actually give birth to education. Teacher is the person that's standing in the front and changing all of that. And that is why sometimes it's hard for you to grow because you've been trying your best to make your child grow. Take a step back if you're a teacher. Take a step back and think about a career plan. And take a step forward in trying to actually be a student along with your student. Grow alongside them and grow together. If you're talking about teachers as a mother, then I cannot imagine anything else better for the school management to be my father. My father don't actually care much about how I feel, but he always have this. Study medicine. Get married by the age of 26, which is now I'm 25. So one more year, I have to get married by the fall, I suppose. And most important of all, be a good person. My father is the person who actually not caring about detail, but he care about how I turn out to be. As school principal, the main objective and the main thing that you can do is to envision. Learning outcome is part of the school principal responsibility. Learning outcome is how we shape students. Learning outcome is how we create human resources. However, as Cambodia society nowadays, school principal take a step back. School principal follow the guideline. School principals scared of the system. Instead of believing in the system, school principals start to follow the system blindly without even have their own vision. And that is why me working in a school every single day, it is really easy for me to actually buy into the concept of pointing my finger toward my school principal. However, there's more than just that. I cannot point fingers because I know. I cannot point fingers because he knows. I cannot point finger because the system is aware. It's just that we forgot to point the finger back to ourselves. Whether or not he has the power to envision, whether or not I have a say in this, and whether or not the system themselves can actually change. If we're talking about the system, the next group would actually be the Ministry of Education, Youth, and Sport. I'm not pointing fingers, but I actually will compare this ministry as my grandmother. My grandmother tell me that you go to school, you're a boy, you need a career, you need educations. But she tell my female cousin this: stay at home, educate yourself to be a good woman, and start preparing to have a family. Can I blame her for saying that? Of course, time changed, time passed. Looking back into history, I know that what happened to her back when she was a student or when she was young, that's what her parent taught her. That's the way of the old educations. I know she's saying that with the purpose of making me a better person. She's saying that with the purpose of making my cousin a better person. Just that time changed, things evolved. Same with education and the policy themselves. They start changing, they start evolving, and all for the intention of making a better education. We just take it the wrong way by taking a step back and not thinking clearly about what we can do to make it better. We point out to the flaws within the policy. We point out to the changes. We point out to the negative result caused by all of that actions. And we forgot one important thing. How can we make it better? How can I avoid all the risks? The next group of people is directly my parents. And to all the young students here in this room, how many of you would reach out to your parent for emotional support? Raise your hand. Oh, there's two. How many of you would reach out for your best friend for emotional support? Okay. Next, how many of you post Facebook statuses to seek for emotional support? Okay. So the next two group are the main support group that many of the speaker has already been discussing about as well. The most important part about these two group are parents, sibling, uncle, grandmothers, friends. We forgot to ask each other the question of how are you feeling? What happened? Are you struggling at school? Instead, we ask, what grade did you get? Did you get a job yet? Will this get you a good job? Will this earn you enough money? That's the support that I think we understand that people need to give you a goal and a vision. But the thing that we need to actually strive forward is the emotion and the feeling. So take a step back, ask the person or the students sitting right next to you, do you have any struggle that I can know about? Anything I can do about it? We're talking a lot about their stakeholders, but there's one thing that I want you to point the finger at. Can you raise your hands up? Can you point to yourself? Point to yourself if you have been a student before. Point to yourself if you have known the teachers that teach you something. Point to yourself if you have been to a school that you remember and have memory about. Point to yourself if you have seen news and ignored it. Point to yourself if your parent has helped you. And point to yourself if you are a good friend. There's a lot of things in all of that that you need to understand that if we look further, we can't find the answers that's supposed to be within you. To actually change and to actually point fingers, don't point too far. Just point to you. I'm not trying to change education system. I'm not trying to change the whole system or making you believe in certain things. But I want you to think of this in a different way. Education is very young, and it's up to us to raise it properly. So if you're with me, please start doing it. Thank you.